Now to our lead story. Has India royally snubbed the Maldives in its hour of crisis? India was the first stop for a planned visit by a special envoy of the Maldivian president. But New Delhi is believed to have said, not now. According to Maldivian authorities, the dates for the visit were not suitable for the Indian leadership. After all, Foreign Minister Sushma Swaraj is visiting Saudi Arabia and Iran, and Prime Minister Narendra Modi will be setting out on a 4-day tour of UAE, Oman and Palestine tomorrow. The Maldives ambassador claims that they had even inquired if their foreign minister could meet a Minister of State for Foreign Affairs in New Delhi. But India's answer remained, it's not possible right now. So instead, Maldives' embattled president Yamin has sent envoys to what he calls friendly nations, such as China, Pakistan and Saudi Arabia, to brief them on the political crisis in the country. Yamin sent his economic development minister to China, the foreign minister to Pakistan and the farming and fisheries minister to Saudi Arabia. The Maldives is the only neighbor which Prime Minister Narendra Modi has not visited in his nearly 4 years in power. In the last week, since the Maldives crisis erupted, the face of the country's opposition, former President Mohammad Nasheed, has consistently called on India to intervene, whether militarily or diplomatically. India says it is monitoring the situation in the Maldives closely and has expressed concern and joined Britain, the US and the United Nations in calling for lifting of the emergency. But beyond that, New Delhi has not shown any overt interest, at least, in intervening in the Maldives. India's arch-rival China has already warned against any outside intervention. India's ties with the Maldives so far have been an attempt to push back China's expanding presence in the country. China, which did not even have an embassy in the Maldives until 2011, has lately emerged as a key player in the domestic politics of the tiny island nation. Beijing, in fact, is ramping up trade and diplomatic links, much to India's annoyance. Meanwhile, later tonight, the United Nations Security Council will discuss the crisis in the Maldives. During a closed-door meeting, the Council will hear a report by the UN Political Affairs Department, which asked the top UN body to take up the matter. UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has already urged the Yamin government to lift the state of emergency imposed earlier this week. The Maldives has been in turmoil since the 1st of February when the Supreme Court ordered the release of political prisoners. Yamin's government defied that order and instead on the 5th of February declared a 15-day state of emergency. Security forces stormed into the court premises and arrested 2 judges, including the Chief Justice of the country. The police also arrested former President Maumoon Abdul Gayoom. The following day, an under-pressure Supreme Court revoked its order to free the political prisoners, quote-unquote, in light of the concerns raised by the president. So what is going on? Let's speak to Ahmed Mohammed, the ambassador to India from the Maldives. Good evening, Ambassador. My first question to you. Reports say that the Maldives has sent special envoys to Pakistan, China and Saudi Arabia, but not to India. How does Mali respond to that?
That news that Maldives envoys are en route to Pakistan, China and Saudi Arabia is true, and we also made a similar request to India, and in fact based on our declared policy, India first, we made that request to India for the special envoy to visit India first, and the envoy was, the special envoy of the President was the Minister of Foreign Affairs himself, and was going to be accompanied by the Minister for Legal Affairs, the Bilateral Secretary and the Director at the South Asia Division of the Foreign Ministry. That request was made yesterday, but we have been told that the timing was not suitable for the Indian leadership to meet the special envoy. And we understand that the External Affairs Minister is away. We also understand that the Prime Minister will be travelling overseas on an official visit soon. While knowing these facts, the request was even at an appropriate level with the External Affairs Ministry's state ministers. It would be appreciated if that meeting could have been arranged.
So you made repeated requests. Do you see this as a snub from India?
I don't see it as a snub. I see it as a matter of scheduling the meeting. India wanted at its highest level to have the meeting, but the story that the Maldives has omitted India in the list of envoys is not true. These meetings should happen on mutual convenience, and the clarification I am making to the media is that there was a request by the Maldives government to send a special envoy, and it was a high-powered delegation.
So what do you hope to achieve, Ambassador, by sending these special envoys to Pakistan, China and Saudi Arabia?
There have been concerns raised by the international community, including bilateral partners. The special envoys were supposed to be briefing the relevant governments on what is happening in Maldives. And I think engagement, discussions around the table is the best way to understand the situation in Maldives.
I assume would also be engagement with the opposition at home. The emergency, though, has been in place in the Maldives for the past few days. What's the situation on the ground? What's life like in Malé, for instance?
Well, on the first question, how is life in Maldives? Life in Maldives is continuing as normal. People's movement has not been restricted. The businesses are continuing as usual. Schools are open. Transportation systems are running. International airports are open. There is no curfew. And the state of emergency itself doesn't hinder any movement within the country.
And the opposition, meanwhile, has been urging India to intervene militarily. How does President Yamin see this? Has there been a comment from the government on this?
I don't know whether it is a comment from the government, but I personally would say that it is quite foolish for anyone to call for military intervention from a third country. The situation is such, as I have just explained, is normal daily life is going on. There is no civil war. There is people are not suffering. The businesses are ongoing, and well, none of the expatriate workers, none of the tourists' life is in danger. There is normality in Maldives. So the call is just foolish, I would say, foolish.
It's interesting that you repeatedly use the word normal. Any emergency, as I understand it, is anything but normal. Top judges are behind bars. The media has reportedly been gagged. The army blocked the parliament building. The United Nations Security Council is debating this crisis, is going to take it up this evening. World leaders have urged the president to follow court orders. Would you describe all of this as normal?
All of that, if that is true, is not normal. But what I'm saying is the state of the Maldives should deal with issues that any power, any independent powers, whether it is the judiciary, whether it is the parliament, or whether it is the government, who tries to go beyond the rules and regulations of the country. No one should be above the rule of law. Everyone should remain within the limitations and within the boundary of rule of law. So it is an internal matter. It is an internal matter, and we have the capacity to deal with our internal matters.
And my final question, Ambassador, what role, if any, does your government want India to play?
The first role of any country to play is to reach out. Therefore, we initiated the reach out to friendly countries, and India was the first to reach out. Let's sit down, let's talk about it, and let's understand it better.
Ambassador Ahmed Mohammed, thanks very much for joining us and sharing with us your side of the story.